Hi everyone, this is Sanjana from Mockcat, and today I'm going to tell you all about the SNAP exam, Symbiosis Institutes, and we'll also look at the form. So let's first understand a little bit about the exam itself. Now, SNAP is an exam that's conducted by the Symbiosis Institutes. There's 16 Symbiosis Institutes that offer MBA programs, and you need to take the SNAP exam for you to be considered for any of those programs. This exam is a little unique in a very good way that they're conducting the exam 3 times and they're considering the best of 3. So the exam is being conducted in December on 10th, 17th, and the 22nd, and you can choose to take it 1, 2, or 3 times. And whichever is your best percentile, that will be considered by the institutes. You need to finish off your registration by 23rd of November, and I'll help you with that also today. Now, in terms of the exam itself, you'll get 60 questions, which we'll have to solve in 60 minutes. The 3 sections that we have are general English with 15 questions. There's not going to be any RC or anything like that. It's going to be more vocabulary focused. The next section is analytical and logical reasoning, where we're going to get 25 questions. And the last section is quant and DIDS, that's data interpretation and data sufficiency. So you're going to get another 20 questions. Thus far, since SNAP has shifted to the 60 questions in 60 minutes method, it's largely been singlet questions. The format will be all MCQs. Each of these will have 4 options, and the marking scheme is +1 for every correct answer, minus 0.25 for any answer that you get wrong. So your accuracy is important, along with speed. Of course, the number of questions is huge. And another good thing about SNAP is there's neither a sectional timer nor sectional cutoff. So since you don't have a sectional percentile and you only need to maximize your overall marks and therefore your overall percentile, you can actually go hard on whichever is your strong suit. So for me, for example, because verbal is something I am strong in, I'll definitely make sure that I'm tackling all the 15 general English questions. So similarly, you can take a call and make sure that you maximize the number of questions that you solve correctly. And you can skip in between all the sections and things like that because there's no time. Now, when it comes to these Symbiosis institutes, there are 16 institutes, and some of the institutes will have more than one program as well. You can go on to snaptest.org. This is the website, and we have it linked for you in the description as well. And you can get details of each of these institutes and what are the programs. So SIBM Pune, which is widely considered to be the top Symbiosis institutes, for instance, along with the regular MBA where you have your finance, marketing, ops, HR, you also have an MBA in innovation and entrepreneurship. And similarly, if you see, each institute could have more than one specialization, and you also have institutes which are only specializing in one area. So SIMC, for example, is focusing more on communication. So similarly, you have B schools that are focusing on IT and so on. So here we come to a key question, because we are obviously going to pay for the exam, particularly if we take it more than one time. How many of these institutes do we pay for? Now, while the answer to that question is different for everybody, what I'll try to do here is I'll try to give you some pointers which will help you take that decision based on whatever constraints you have in terms of timing, budget, and your own interests and things like that. And hopefully this helps you to decide which all institutes you apply to and how many times you take the exam. Now, one thing to remember is all the Symbiosis institutes will typically consider the best of your 3 percentiles, and there's no normalization in between the exams. What I mean by that is, now in CAT also we have 3 slots. So if the average score in any particular section is a little higher or lower, the IIMs will actually normalize our score so that nobody is at a slight advantage or slight disadvantage, no matter how much slight, right? So if you are in a slot where there's a tougher verbal paper, for example, and so if the average score in VARC in your slot is a little lower than the other 2 slots, there will be normalization and your scaled score could actually be higher than your raw score, so that is accounted for. But the Symbiosis authorities say that they've rigorously tested SNAP and each exam is of equal or similar difficulty, and so there is no normalization. So given that they're simply going to consider the best of 3 percentiles, the best thing to do would be to take it 2 or 3 times. 3 times if you can, but at least 2 times. Because the marks which are required for us to get into the top B schools like SIBM and SCMHRD also are somewhere around 40 plus marks out of a total 60 marks possible. So you can get an understanding here, the number of questions that we need to solve and our accuracy both have to be quite high. So the more number of times you take it, obviously the higher the chances that you are going to get the percentile required to get shortlisted by these institutes. Now, the top B schools, I already referred to a couple of them. SIBM in Pune, that's the number one. You also have SCMHRD in Pune. A lot of people tend to think of it as an HRB school, but that's not the case. You essentially can choose other specializations as well. SIIB again is a third one that you can look to consider. SIBM and SCMHRD being very clearly number one and number two, and SIBM typically being ranked high on most ranking scales. You can also head over to moccat.com and get more info about the B schools. Just click on Info Zone, click on Snap for the exam or top business schools, and you'll get an idea of the average salaries and so on. So when it comes to these B schools, which of these B schools do you apply to? Because each B school is again going to cost you, and you're going to obviously have your entire application process and all. And do you apply for the general MBA program which B schools such as SIBM have, or are you also going for specialized programs? So remember that in India, typically a lot of companies are going to look at the rank of the B school itself. So a company would potentially be a little more eager to hire you if you are studying in an SIBM versus if you're studying in a B school which is ranked lower, even if you are studying in a course which is specialized and very suited to that role. The reason being that it's obviously tougher to get into SIBM than to get into another Symbiosis B school where the percentile required is a little lower, for example, and that automatically becomes sort of a screening mechanism. So this is the usual thought process. This doesn't mean that any of the institutes are bad or you should not consider it, but sometimes there could be a preference, and it's again something which showcases in the roles, the designations, and the average salary. So if you look at Indian B schools, for instance, the top 10 B schools, the average salary is upwards of 30 lakhs, right? And it does reduce as we go into the next 10 and the next 10 and so on. So that's one part definitely to consider. The other thing which you should consider is what are you interested in, right? So don't go for something which is not the flagship program where you have a chance to select your specialization just because it's this B school or it's that B school, it's an IIM or it's a Symbiosis B school. Really consider if you are interested in that area. If possible, try to talk to a few students who are maybe currently studying there or who've graduated either from that B school or anyone who specialized in something similar. So if you are considering communication, for example, right, if you're not able to get hold of somebody from SIMC, you could always try to talk to somebody who has a similar specialization from an IIM, because some IIMs also have this specialization. So look out for specific reviews, perhaps on the institute website, on Quora, on other college websites. Talk to people who are actually studying there or have studied there, and really delve deep and understand, is this something that you're interested in and you want to continue forward for the next, say, at least 10 years as your career. The other thing to consider is placements. Now, when you have institutes which offer multiple programs, one more thing to consider is, are all the placements joint or not? Now, if the placements are joint, what happens is you're getting access to all of the companies that are coming into that institute, and you're also potentially getting a chance to get into a different function. Should you get in and realize that, hey, you know what, I thought I liked finance, but actually I like marketing more, or vice versa. So that's something to consider. Now, at this point, I'll also highlight that this is something which is not just needed for the non-flagship programs. Symbiosis B schools also require you to choose your specialization pretty early on. So in IIMs and most other B schools, you are typically deciding your specialization somewhere close to the end of your first year if you've gone for the regular PGP program. But when it comes to Symbiosis, they'll typically tend to ask you during the application process, and once you're getting in, you will have somewhere around 2 to 6 weeks to choose your specialization. They don't usually have a strict restriction. So certain B schools like SPGen, for example, want to have a certain number of students per specialization. Most Symbiosis institutes, from what I know from our own students, don't do that. So they don't say that we're going to have 60 finance students, 60 marketing students, and so on. They let the students decide, but you have to decide pretty early in your first 1 or 2 months itself. So even if you are not choosing to go for the non-flagship programs and you're only applying for the regular program, by the interview process, you should have made up your mind. So just consider this as well when you're choosing which institutes to apply for. Should you apply to these institutes? 100%. But let's say if you are not really sure, say you're not from a commerce background like me, or you don't know what you're going to like and you want to take that time to decide, these are institutes where you'll have to actually take that decision pretty early on. Now, one more thing to understand here is we are going to get our SNAP results sometime in early Jan, and we're going to get a CAT response sheet most likely in early December itself. That's how the trend has been. So some of the institutes where they have a deadline before these exams. You got to apply now. But there will be institutes where their application deadlines are going to close in December or Jan or so on. So what that means is right now, if you're not really sure of your prep level or what is the type of score that you're going to get, and you want to have a few aspirational B schools as well as a few safety B schools, you can choose to apply to the B schools where the deadlines are before these exams, and the institutes where the deadlines are going to be open later. By that time, you'll know how you have performed in the exam and you can take at least a somewhat more informed call. So that's again one more parameter to consider. Another thing to consider is your own profile. So IIMs, for example, will look at your CAT score, but they look at a few other things such as ACADS, work experience, diversity, and so on. Now, when it comes to Symbiosis Institutes, they're only looking at your SNAP percentile. And here again, there's no sectional cutoff or anything like that. So if your profile is weaker in some sense, let's say, maybe your ACADS are weak, or maybe you're a fresher and you're a little worried about your composite score when it comes to, the IIMs, institutes like Symbiosis and similarly even XLRI and NM and all actually are looking at only the aptitude exam. So what that means is the pass doesn't matter as much. A little bit of the score will be considered in your final selection, but for you to get a shortlist, if you get a really good SNAP percentile, that's the only thing that is important. The other thing to consider is, do you fall in a reserved category? So IIMs, IITs, a lot of these schools which come under government universities, they will have reservation which will be for EWS, NCOBC, SC, ST, PWD and so on. When it comes to Symbiosis B schools, the reservation is rather limited. I think they have it only for SC, ST and maybe one or two categories. So you can just check that. And if you feel that because of your category, there is a benefit that you will get in a so-called government B school because there's a reservation, so the percentile that you need will be a little lower there. That's again something which you can consider. So you could take a call saying that, I know that, in CAT, the percentile need for IIMs is a little lower. So maybe I'll target SIBM and let the others go, or maybe I'll go for SIBM and SCMHRD and let the others go. So you can consider your budget, your timing, your interest, your profile, and all of these, and then take a call as to how many times you want to take the exam and which all are the Symbiosis institutes that you are applying. I would definitely recommend to take the exam at least 2 times just in case. Now let's quickly look at the next thing, which is your SNAP prep strategy. Now I'm considering that you are taking the CAT exam. So the extra sections that you have here, the verbal section will be different. You will have vocabulary and grammar, and these are things which we typically don't have in CAT. The logical reasoning section is also different because these are singlet questions. So you will have things like blood relations, clocks, calendars, a lot of arrangement and ranking as well, but individual questions and not the type of cases that we have in CAT. And data sufficiency again is something which occurs in this exam that's not there in CAT. So how should you prepare for it and what is important? Now, first and foremost, given that language is 15 questions and quant DIDS is 20, whereas LR is 25 questions, that is the part that you definitely have to prioritize. Make sure that you are taking a few snap mocks, you are practicing, make sure you have access to content or classes for all of these, and you need to really boost your speed, avoid silly mistakes, and try to get as high a score over here. This is simply one section that you cannot ignore. Speed is really important because we are trying to solve as much of 60 questions in an hour, and at the same time, accuracy also counts because there's a negative score of minus 0.25 for every wrong answer. So what I would suggest you do is you can take up mocks. At mockcat.com, we do have snap mocks, for example, and you can try and see what your current score is and make a plan to build up to a 40 plus score from now till the snap dates. In terms of preparation, at the moment, I would suggest that vocabulary and grammar is something which you could do now, particularly vocabulary, while CAT would be number one priority in my view, and that's what I recommend to all of our students. This is something which will help you for CAT as well. Don't look to do things like, memorize or something like that. What you could do is you could join our Telegram channel. It's something which is available for free for everybody. And as you read a daily article and practice finding the author's viewpoint and match it to mine, I'll link it for you in the description. What you can also do is you can look up any unknown words and concepts. You can also use tech in terms of apps or other websites to help you for vocabulary testing. It's also something which we have in mockcat.com which you can use. Some of it is free, so you could just head over and just click on speed verbal and take some of the vocabulary tests to get an idea. Logical reasoning and data sufficiency is something that you can actually take up after CAT. That's because CAT DLR itself is supposed to be tougher, and if you are prepping for that, These singlet questions are probably things that you will find to be easier. You definitely need to practice. So depending on your time and your strategy, you could look to maximize it, immediately after CAT along with say ZAT prep, or you can maybe prepare a little bit now. Since the tests also will be just 1 hour like the exam, you can look to start taking maybe a snap mock, say right now, get a sense of what is it that you are scoring, make a plan of how do you get to 40 plus, maybe start taking a mock every 2 weeks or even every week if you are on track on your CAT prep. Now we'll also have more in-depth videos on the SNAP exam, and we'll also keep you posted of how the exam is after we take it. But now let's look at the form and understand the registration process. So you got to register on snaptest.org. You can also get an idea of all of the institutes over here. You have all the important dates and all other information, which you can check out here. Let's start applying. So if I'm starting, I'm going to go for register. I definitely go for all of these, read it, understand all of it, and then continue. A common question which people ask is, my name. There are a couple of variations for it. Certain places I just have, say, Pani Sanjana, Sanjana P or something like that. They've made it very clear. Just look at what's there on your 10th or your 12th certificates. Now here is where you can choose one or more options. So I'm opting for the first one. And then the last thing you do is you upload your picture. So you'll get all your details and you can validate them. You get an OTP in your mobile, and then I go ahead to make the payment. It's a simple thing as you can see, but of course you have to also apply to the insurance. So before you make the payment, I definitely recommend that you check all of the details because this is something that you won't be able to change, and we just don't want the unnecessary headache. So just check it out once and then you go ahead for it. Now I'll just show you what it looks like. Now in my case, I've selected only one, so it's 2250. If I would have selected 2 or 3, the fees would have increased by 2x or 3x. So as you can see, the usual options of card, internet banking, UPI and all are available to us. And once we make the payment, we'll get a confirmation. So that's it for me on this video. I hope all of this information was useful. Do visit moccat.com to get more information about SNAP, about the B schools, or if you want to practice some of these tests, or you want to sign up for our classes for CAT, SNAP, ZAT, and other important B schools. All the best.